The U.S. women's national team are no longer unbeaten under Emma Hayes. Despite the loss, I think stepping back and slowing down the film tells an incredibly positive story. Every player has moments on film to be proud of, but the collective improvements are what I found the most impressive. I'm Bridie O'Toole. Welcome back to Busy Watch Women's Soccer. Let's go look at some film. I want to start off by taking a look at Japan. I've heard so much said about how they play in such a fluid manner. They're really hard to defend. What does that actually mean in practice? Well, I think one of the easiest things to point to is how much two-touch football they play. Just pay attention to the number of touches taken, and it's very controlled for quick football. Two touches gives you way more control of the game than one-touch play, and I like that it also really forces the players to keep moving, keep creating new options. So for me, the two-touch is a really big part of it. I also think Japan manipulates space incredibly well. This one, everything about the body language is saying we're going over in this direction, but Japan's pulled a player down here. They've created this lovely, massive pocket for themselves, and they're going to exploit it very quickly with two-touch play again. Everybody's committed to that, and I like that it's not just short passes played in with two-touch. It's really everything. Everybody's working together as a unit. It's flowing quickly. They look fluid. Really, really great stuff. Now, this extends, I think, on defense as well. In transition moments, they don't turn over the ball much, but when they do, there is a real drive to go attack and pressure the ball immediately. They also do a great job at sending multiple players to cut down angles. Kind of gets to the point where you're like, do they have two players doing the same job? But they are organized and they know exactly what they're doing. So what happens when two well-organized teams face each other? Well, the little details start to matter, and elements of this match were extremely reminiscent of the matchup at the Olympics. The throws, I think, were a really big part of that because Japan was super intentional in both matches about where and when they committed turnovers. And it led to this horrible sequence for Crystal Dunn where she was just taking throw after throw. And I think there was really just a lot of frustration in this first 30 seconds because the U.S. couldn't possess the ball. When we finally do have their first possession, that Japanese pressure from both sides, it's so difficult to deal with. And then here we have the throw-in sequence. Things move very quickly, some miscommunication, and it's brutal having this happen this early, but it's pretty understandable, all things considered. I think there's a really big gap here between Sonnet and McKeown. The back line, I think, is just a little bit too condensed here, but it's a difficult scenario because you're in your defensive look. You might need to have a slightly different look for the throw-ins, and maybe that's what some of the positioning is here. I kind of feel like Yohannes could be a little bit lower. Overall, it's just an area I have questions because this looks pretty similar to me to the manner in which Germany scored against the U.S. during the Olympics. So I'm sure this is on the coaching staff's radar right now. Again, just a lot of things going wrong. I really don't think there's one particular player to point to. I think if you really want to try, we could potentially say that at this point, Sonnet, knowing that she has her player on the inside of the goal, which she does not want, that she needs to then go for that ball. But I think Campbell also wants it. I think number one thing is communication, right? It's a new squad, new folks coming together. And that's the main thing that was missing. So what do? Go fix the basics. Pressure in the midfield is something that was really lacking, but that did take a lot longer to fix. The backline spacing, that was fixed almost immediately. Started seeing more interceptions, allowed the U.S. also to push the ball further up the field by having more distance between themselves and Japan when they were winning those balls back. So it was a really positive change, and it allowed them to start building offensively out of that. We started to see some decent looks. It was a good ball by Yasmin Ryan, but it's a big switch ball. So by the time it gets there, Japan's kind of shifted, and it makes it hard for Sentnor here because the look she had is gone by the time the ball gets there. But it's a great opportunity to build from. So Japan had a player go down with a head injury. She is going to come off the pitch. Now, I had the pleasure of being at this match. I wish I had recorded it, but during this time, Hayes called two players over, gave them a little bit of a talking to on positioning, and those two players were, would you know it, Katerina Macario and Sentnor. When play resumes, Japan are down an attacking midfielder, so that's a player that would be right about here, probably. And we cannot see Kat Macario, unfortunately, but what she's going to do is really intelligent. She's been doing a lot of work with her back to goal, kind of with her feet maybe a little bit stuck in the mud. But she's going to pull down much lower this time and really manipulate Japanese defense. So there we go. She's done a great job of pulling her player, slides this ball in there to Ali Sentnor, and it is a fantastic finish. But the thing I love most about this play is how quickly you can see the adjustments pay off. It's just pure tactical genius from Emma Hayes. Like if you look at the back line here, there's a pretty significant difference. Spacing is good, but it's the positioning. So over here, it's taken up much more of the U.S. left side of the pitch. And they're also, I think, a lot higher up in the goal look. So just a really, really great way for the U.S. to manipulate space, take advantage of Japan being a player down. Really liked this one. I think it was just cool to see. And Ali Sentnor, my goodness, she just has some finish. I really like it from this angle because this is one for me. How are you supposed to know where to go as a goalie with a touch like that? It's just crazy, crazy good. So I think the U.S. improved greatly over the course of the first half, and there's appetite to continue with that improvement. So because of that, we saw Sentnor come out for Shaw, Dunn come out for Nighswonger. I do think some element of this was performance related. And then this is interesting to me. Anytime I see like two hands like this of the players talking, it's usually a positional thing related to sort of pivot movement. So Dunn, I think, was really losing track of Japan's right back. And sorry, I ruined that clip almost completely. But I just don't think she's even aware that she's there. And we know she's great one-on-one. She can recover. That is not the issue at all, as that she's going to make herself real tired having to do that all night. And then I think she was forced into some bad situations, made it a little bit difficult to clear the ball. Partnership between her and Sentnor was just not quite it either. Sentnor just felt like she was having an off night. That seemed like a ball she normally wins. She kind of seemed like, a little bit of a struggle here on defense, maybe trying to do a little bit too much. It was just a lot to deal with, and her game looked a little bit off to me. Even on offense, I think there were some moments where, Japan was not giving her a lot, and it became difficult. And again, this partnership with her and Dunn, it was not it, and I was quite frankly ready for a change. Almost immediately at the half, we see that width come in, so Nighswonger over here creating a ton of space between herself and the center back. I'm also really curious if her positioning is tied to the right back or maybe the right wing, Yasmin Ryan, because we see here how much Nighswonger is moving when Ryan is moving. Curious about that. But another thing I think Nighswonger does fantastically well is throw-ins. I know it's a small detail, but the outside backs are the only two players that take throw-ins, so they have to be good at it. I think she does add a good bit of disguise into her throw-ins. I think she's very patient. She never shows any kind of frustration, but she also just has this very gentle lob, which is nice to play off. So I do think this was actually an area of some pretty quick improvement. And Shaw also really clearly was trying to push play out to the right wing. So I think a lot of this purpose behind creating space on the left was to create more options on the right. This touch, by the way, I had to include this just because it was so good. This has to be the best touch taken the entire tournament. It's absolutely disgusting. I don't know how anybody can play that good. Fantastic play. Another area I liked, I think Nighswonger was pretty good on defense. Really great commitment there to go cover the outside back. So I'm pretty sure the instruction coming on was, hey, when you're engaging here and this overlap comes, take the overlap. Take the overlap immediately. Don't even worry about the ball. Take the player. And it's good here. So I like that a lot. I think we could really see the instructions change, which was cool. The other thing that I liked for Nighswonger, I just figured out her defending a little bit. And that right there is the answer to me. Because she's small, I don't think she can afford to let her feet get set, especially against bigger players. So this concept of defending while moving, I think that's going to work out really well for her. I liked this a lot. And her and Shaw, a little bit of a mismatch there, but in general, I thought they were working really well together. The press, Jaden Shaw had an immediate impact there. And Nighswonger and Shaw, not really a partnership, but I'd pictured before, but they just worked well together to move the ball. As much as I think those first tactical changes paid off, it doesn't mean there weren't bumps along the way. This entire sequence, unfortunately, starts off a Nighswonger throw, just to kind of prove a point that, it really doesn't it doesn't really matter, right? You can improve and fix as much as you want, but there's still always these random elements of the game. Japan also did such a good job at this, drawing the pressure, and it becomes so frustrating when you're in Heaps' position and you have to press, and you're probably not going to get the ball. And this is where we see a lot of that frustration start to play out, right? It's like, I'm pressing, nothing's happening, we're not getting a result, and you get one of these little frustration fouls. And I think Ryan is rightly arguing this is not exactly where the foul occurred, because this is an unfortunate spot to have to defend a free kick from. It's really not that much better than having to defend a penalty at this point. I think if we're trying to find fault here, we're really, really, really clutching at straws. This is just a fantastic play from Japan, but if we really want to try and make a case, I think you could argue there's one too many people on the wall. Japan is very symmetrical here. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2. So why don't we just match that symmetry, and move someone out of the wall and have 3 people outside here. Of course, I'm saying this in hindsight after seeing the play. It's also different, but this is just really difficult because if it's a penalty, you just start running immediately. But the 2 players that are post players, and the post players here, Nighswonger and Fox, so their job is going to be to run in and basically defend the areas inside of the post. If it's a penalty, you just start running as soon as that ball goes, but they kind of have to read and react here. It makes this a lot harder. Nighswonger almost gets there. Fox is beaten. It's just really unfortunate because Campbell, I think, does a great job to get out there and get hands on that. It is what it is. It's unfortunate. Once the US go down, it's time to get more aggressive about tactical changes. So we're going to see Albert come in for Yohannes, and to me that was very much about addressing the pressure in the midfield that I spoke about earlier. But the other part of this is Biondolo for Macario and Alyssa Thompson for Yasmin Ryan. And what that does is it helps stretch the field out more so that in the midfield there's more time and a little bit more space to help with that pressure. So I don't think this was performance related for Macario or Ryan. I think if you watch these clips, they are just full out running. They were doing so much running, and it felt like it was kind of just the 2 of them a lot of the time. They were doing it on the counter opportunities, but they're also doing it on this press that we saw earlier. So I think you have to keep those players fresh if you want to continue executing like that. Now, Yohannes, I don't know what she was doing. There were times where it just felt like she was just hanging out, and I'm kind of curious why, because my theory here is I think she's overcorrecting. I'm just going to go back a smidge here. We'll talk about that in a bit. But, she's just kind of like here and letting players go past her. She's not really getting to the ball aggressively, and I do think that's kind of her responsibility based on her position as the right side defensive mid. Her and Coffey's roles, I'm sure, are slightly different, but just based on positioning, I think she needs to go for this here. When I looked at her film months and months ago, I felt like she was actually way too aggressive on defense, like just grabby, pushy, shovey. And so I think maybe she's overcorrecting for that. But there are other things, just like that little ball. It's like sometimes she just was not making great decisions under pressure. I think the throws especially, she wasn't really helping on because it was just kind of moving too quickly, not crisply enough. This is another one here. It's just, there's a touch of the body, but there's no real effort to get in front of a ball. So I think we saw improvements here really, really fast. Albert, to me, I think did a lot more to add pressure here, right? The counter press comes very quickly. And I think Alyssa Thompson also offers a lot defensively because she's so fast and her positioning on the press has become very good. And again, right, now we see the cohesiveness. Everything's coming together. We've added in all these different players, and our press is really starting to pay off. Alyssa Thompson also adds a speed option, so when Campbell collects this ball here, instead of taking a lot of time to reset, we very quickly can go do something aggressively with Thompson, and her footwork is just so good. She's so direct when she's attacking. I love watching her play, but I did not notice that she ran into the ref. I've probably watched this clip 50 times at this point. I don't know how I just noticed that. But the other thing, she's playing on the right wing, which changes her game and shows she became a lot more about just serving balls in. And I think she was doing a nice job at that, where she was really creating some opportunities for Haran and Biondolo to get on the end of. So that was definitely part of the plan. Compared to the start of a match, the US is now showing a pretty different tactical game plan, and I think that was the biggest driver between Tara McKeown coming out and Tierna Davidson going in. Some of it might have been performance related, but I don't think McKeown had a terrible day by any means. The film is a real mixed bag, but everybody's film from that match is a real mixed bag. It was a tough, competitive match against a good opponent. So yeah, things are choppy, things are not perfect, but I don't think she had a bad day by any means. I'm very curious to see how and when she comes back, because I just think she has this really unique read of the ball. There's different philosophies on this, and like, do you want to look at feet? Do you want to look at hips? Do you want to look at eyes? I think most people will tell you ball comes first, everything else is just second, but she just, I don't know, she just gets it. She sees the rotation on the carpet. Davidson, though, brought in to send in long balls mostly. And I loved, but it did not take long to see the adjustment here and see this ball perfectly dialed in. I mean, her and Biondolo got this down to an art, and I love that this team was able to just create just off Davidson. Now that she's developed that ball over top, you send a fake out wide to Nighswonger, have her cross it in. Another opportunity for Biondolo to finish off of. This team was super effective, and Davidson, it was just the variety of balls that she was able to execute. Things changed really fast with her on the pitch. It was a change that I really like, and she got close herself. It would have been, man, I would have been really stoked for her, but came really, really close on that one. I think she showed a real drive and a hunger to help improve this team. This play I am so curious about, because if you watch Corbin Albert, she is just motivated to clear out her player. So I think whether this was for Haran or it was for Davidson, it was going over here somewhere, and execution is just a tiny bit off. But this is what was happening at the end of the match. The US were getting set piece after set piece. They were really, really trying. They just could not finish. Japan were the winners of this tournament. They played an excellent game. I've so enjoyed watching them. But most of all, I really enjoyed seeing the improvements, the tactical changes that the US made. They only got better as the game went on. I think the film looked better. Individual players looked better. They just didn't get the result, but they built and built as that game went on. And I think as far as losses go, this has to be the best loss you can possibly ask for. It feels like a real loss because it's a tournament environment. It's to a good competitive team. You're going to learn from it. You got a ton of information about the players. I am stoked. This is the happiest I've ever been about a loss. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you soon. That's all.